So once a week, that quartet played at the Maple Leaf, and eventually they started sounding like a really good band. These guys could follow Booker. We picked out a bunch of songs. Booker had a whole book full of songs that he wanted to do. 2 weeks before the session, he ended up in the hospital, had kind of a nervous breakdown, and was in Baptist Hospital in New Orleans. And I went to visit him there. He wanted to go ahead with the session. The day before the session, we found out that he'd lost his teeth somewhere in the hospital. And John remembered that he'd had another pair made because he had upper teeth made with a star in one of his front teeth. When he got him back, the star was on the wrong side. And he made enough ruckus with the doctor. He had a real reason why he wanted the star on whatever side it was, that the doctor had to make him another pair of teeth, another set of teeth with a star on the right side. Well, those are the ones that he lost, but John Parsons managed to find the other set with the star on the other side. So we finally, with teeth, went to the recording studio. For the first couple of days, I had no idea what to do. It was a cat and mouse chase with Booker and the musicians. He wouldn't play any of the songs that we talked about recording. He wouldn't talk to people. I just didn't know what to do, you know. And sometimes he'd go off and he would say, you know, get Earl King down here, get Cyril Neville down here, get Gallon Toussaint down here. I want songs. I need songs. Actually, Cyril and Earl showed up, but the minute they showed up, he wouldn't talk to them either. This was really early in my days as a record producer, and I'm thinking, oh man, you know, I'm going to spend this money, and I'm going to go back, and I'm not going to have a record for it. This is not going to be good. At one point on the second day, he just kind of went off in the corner and crouched down, and Red Tyler and I went over and picked him up. And I said, you know, Booker, motherfucker, play the piano. I'm going to cancel the session. You know, we can't do this. This is not productive. So he went down to the piano and kind of gave me a little smile and, you know, played a little bit. But so after the second day, John Parsons took him out for dinner that night, bought him some boiled crabs. And I went back to the studio early the next day because I just wanted to listen to all of this. I mean, there were some fragments of stuff in there I thought might be salvageable. And there was Booker standing at the door when I got to the studio. And saying, Scott, I want to play. I want to play now. So the engineer showed up. We went in. Booker sat at the piano, and you know, he wanted me to come sit next to him out in the studio. And he played all the solo piano stuff that's on the album in a period of about an hour and a half. Then the other guys showed up, and we cut the band tracks that were on the record. A couple of them he was really focused with the band. Then he started to drift a little bit again. But I knew then that I had 14 or 15 songs.
Right. Okay.
And some of them were really good.
So he could drift.
So he asked me if he could be paid. So I said, all right, you know, you made a record, I'll give you a check. And really, I booked 3 days in the studio. That was it. That was the budget that I had. Sometimes I wish I'd given him half of it and gotten him to come back again another day, but I mean, when I started making records for Rounder, a lot of them were on a real shoestring, and I was conscious of every dollar that I spent.
You said the Gate record was 20 grand, and that was 80 or so. Is that
Yeah.
What was that? That was a big budget.
That was a big budget for Rounder. I think with Booker it was more like 8,000.
Okay.
And out of that, I had to pay the studio, my travel expenses, the musicians, and Booker. I think we gave him $3,000. So I gave him his check. He went out to the studio and started playing the opening of Professor Longhair's Big Chief, all of a sudden he stopped. He said, "What time does the bank close?" Somebody said, 4 o'clock, Booker. He was out the door. That was the last anybody saw of him for 2 weeks.
Who was your, and I'm not assuming you needed one, I don't know, was somebody teaching you New Orleans, the musicians, and where? Was somebody, like, or maybe guide is a better word? Or were you kind of using your own knowledge of people who've been around and, you know, roaming around yourself? Or was someone taking you to clubs or telling you who was playing
Well,
there?
I knew the recorded music of New Orleans pretty well, but I would say that so much was just an extension of that first Gatemouth session, where I started to meet musicians who liked to work with me, and people would just turn me on to other musicians. And you know, I truly value the rhythm section guys that I've worked with over the years. The drummers, Herman Ernest, Shannon Powell, Raymond Weber, Herlin Riley, Johnny Vodakovich. I mean, that to me is the wonderful thing about New Orleans, is this pool of great musicians who haven't put themselves in any kind of musical ghetto. So when I made the Bill Morrissey record in New Orleans, there were Johnny Vodakovich and James Singleton again playing with Bill Morrissey, along with Lee Alenzino, who played electric bass on some tracks, who played bass with Buckwheat Zydeco, Michael Tolles, who played the wah-wah guitar on Isaac Hayes' Shaft, playing guitar. So to meet these musicians that just have these big open ears, it can, you know, with something like Bill Morrissey, you can make something really fresh. Yeah. Bill liked it so good that he went back to do his Mississippi John Hurt record there, which I was not able to work with him on that because they had another obligation at the time. But yeah, it's.
Do you feel you had an impact on the scene, on the city scene?
I think so. Yeah.
How's that?
Well, just as the jazz festival itself made New Orleans music into a tourist attraction, I guess you'd say,
Yeah.
in a way that it hadn't. I mean, you could always go to Bourbon Street, and from what people tell me in the '60s, particularly, was you could hear really good music there.
Right.
I mean, Booker and Dr. John used to have a B3 Hammond organ gig in the French Quarter. I mean, I think what I started doing, too many people are doing now. And I think that the impact of putting out a Gatemouth Brown or a Johnny Adams or an Irma Thomas record now would be not much impact at all.
Okay.
Because Bruce Iglauer at Alligator too, I think, showed that same thing to people. He was much more interested in Chicago blues, of course, but that these artists and this music didn't die when the commercial scene faded. I mean, when Johnny Adams died a year and a half ago, Quint and I made all the funeral arrangements for him, and I guess I knew then that I was part of that musical community. I do feel I've had a fairly more of an impact probably on Zydeco in kind of creating a new sound. That,
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
But-
I do want to talk about that.
But I think in New Orleans, you know, it's when I started making those records, other people simply weren't doing it. Alan Toussaint and his recordings team, he wanted to make hit records. He didn't want to make records that sold 10, 20,000 copies.
Right.
I mean, I wish I had a hit record too, but there was that other level of just appreciating this as contemporary music with a different kind of roots.
Did you want to make hit records?
Huh?
Did you want to make
Oh,
hit
I did,
records?
yeah, but Rounder was not a company that was geared toward that. I'm not sure the records I made were hit records either, you know. But
Right.
yeah.
But what were you doing that would not? How were you working differently than Toussaint then? I guess that's what I want to clarify.
Well, Toussaint had his day by that time.
Okay.
His sound was not selling.
But you talk about he wanted to make hit records, and you seem to try and create a contrast between that and at least I thought you were.
Yeah. Well,
I guess I'd like you to articulate the
no,
contrast.
I actually back then really did think these records could be hits.
Okay.
Yeah. But they weren't, so. You know, the Solomon Burke record. Now, Rounder did try to promote these to black radio, the Southern black radio. It's just, I think in a way some people felt burned by Rounder after the first Solomon Burke record.
Why?
In that we didn't really take care of enough of the people that had helped make that record a hit or acknowledge them. You know, again, this is personal contact with people.
Radio people, you mean?
Radio people or somebody that would break a record in a market or, you know, and
What are you supposed to do for?
I don't know,
It's a
call them
really
up and say
naive
thank
question.
you. If it's,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
goes a long way sometimes. Or take them out to dinner, you know, just
Yes,
something.
yes. You're right, it does.
You know, there's a little bit of corruption in wherever you look to find it.
Right.
But I wasn't talking about participating in that. I was talking more about, yeah. But you know, I'm generally really satisfied with the records I made. There was a point where I had to kind of make a mental break behind feeling that I have to do it for this $10,000 and that's it, you know. And I think sometimes I would make compromises that I personally wasn't happy with, but financially that I had to live with it. At one point I decided I don't want to make records anymore if I have to settle for those compromises. And generally I don't think I have.
Did you get bigger budgets?
Yeah. But it's something kind of, there's also sometimes an advantage, I think, to working with a small budget. We'd work from noon until 4 or 5 in the morning, you know, for a whole week. And you had to get it done, so you did it, you know.
So Zydeco came later, though, right?
Yeah, I started working with Buckwheat in 1985.
How did he come to you? You did his first record, right? His very first record, didn't you?
Well, no, he'd had 4 albums for a Louisiana label, and Hammond Scott from Blacktop, Hammond has also been a friend of mine since I started coming to New Orleans, and when he started Blacktop, he came to me and asked if Rounder would distribute Blacktop, which, you know, a decade later just became a disastrous situation, but he and I are good friends to this day, and he had actually I didn't know this, but he talked to Buckwheat too.
Okay.
So I heard Buckwheat at the Jazz and Heritage Festival, and again, this was not old Creole folk music.
Yeah.
He was a real aggressive young guy who had kind of a Zydeco show band together, but it got people going, man. So I just approached him backstage at the Jazz Festival. He introduced me to his manager, who was a young woman from Lafayette named Peggy Bilo at the time. And later I went to Lafayette. Peggy picked me up with her parents in this big old Lincoln Continental and drove me to Richard's Club in Lautelle, Louisiana, where Buckwheat was playing that night. It's probably
Had you been out in that part of the state before?
No, it was probably 83 or 84. And it's the connections get made, and then I've been lucky that things have just grown out of them, because my relationship with Kerman Richard, who owns Richard's Club, was what ended up in bringing me Beaujacques. You know, him calling me up and saying, Scott, you know, you got to come hear this guy.
Is that right?
Yeah. And in turn, telling Beaujacques, you got to meet Scott. You know, you guys got, and that's where that came from, as a club owner. You know, so it was quite a different world back then, the Zydeco world. In South Louisiana, this is true to a degree still, but the Creole people keep to themselves and the Cajun people keep to themselves. So to have an Anglo face show up in a Zydeco club, it was usually a cop or a record guy. Chris Strachwitz, who I admire greatly, did the same thing in the 60s, but going into Houston to record Light and Hopkins and Clifton Chenier and so forth too. But I think Chris took more of a documentary approach to recording, we did both Buckwheat's records here, actually, in Massachusetts. Right down there, that's where we recorded them.
Who had produced his earlier records?
I think he probably did it himself, with Mark Miller, maybe, who worked at studio in Crowley, Louisiana. And they had a label called Blues Unlimited. Mark Miller, yeah.
What ideas did he have? What ideas did you have? How did the mix work on the Turning Point album?
I would say about 75% of that album came out of Buckwheat's repertoire. The Tyrone Davis song "Turning Point." Lee Alenzino, the bass player, came up with Jimmy Lewis's "Help Me Understand You." But for the second record, which was actually the title song, "Waiting for My Yaya," was a little hit in South Louisiana. Buckwheat still plays it in every show. We needed another couple of songs, and I went home that night and was trying to think of something that was simple and catchy that might work for Buckwheat, and I came back the next day with the tape of the Lee Dorsey version of that song, and he went out into the studio and says, "Okay, you know, I'll do that." And obviously he knew it and started doing that that little kind of syncopated reggae thing on the piano. And I'd say within 3 hours we had the whole thing down on tape. And but doing the reggae stuff and the R&B, I've often thought that now Ted Fox, who has managed Buckwheat since Buckwheat left Rounder, has done a remarkable job with Buck. And maybe he's right. Maybe he was right in making Buckwheat take a little step backwards toward a more traditional Zydeco sound for Buckwheat's first island record. But man, I thought that band that Buckwheat had was on the verge of doing something that would veer off more toward funk, rather than an update of Clifton Chenier. And I think that was what we were fooling with the Yaya record, and that's what I was trying to encourage with that record. And it took another 10 years for Beaujacques to come along. Now Buckwheat is an accomplished musician, someone who can take any song and play it. Beaujacques was coming more out of this more primitive Zydeco style, country kind of style. But there was that funk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did Buckwheat, did he want to, he's kind of like I think I've got my facts right, like a Creole nationalist in a way. He doesn't want to be called Cajun. Is that,
Oh,
he
yeah,
doesn't want to
yeah.
be lumped in with that at all?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I don't blame him.
yeah. Well, they're let him in the clubs, right?
Yeah.
Did he ever evidence this, wanting to not get too far away from more something that would be called more traditional Zydeco?
I think he's always wanted to get away from it. Yeah. And in fact, when he recorded Beast of Burden or it was a Clapton song, I mean, those ideas were coming from him, not from his manager. Well, at least that's what Ted told me. He was always looking for something else to bring into.
Did he do Shot the Sheriff? Is that the song? Is that the one?
No. What was it? He had Eric Clapton playing on it too. I can't remember what song it was. But in those days when I worked with him, he was really checking things out. I think willing to explore different things, and Zydeco, and much more so than Cajun music, has been able to embrace all these other kinds of things and just throw them into the sound. And I just did a ska song with Nathan and the Zydeco Cha-Chas a few months ago, and we've done some dance mixes on most of the Zydeco records I've done lately, where I'll just get the musicians to play a groove for 10 minutes. So we end up composing the song in the computer, loading 2-measure samples of bass and drums and guitar parts and so forth into a sequencer. And then the band can either play over the top of our sequence track, or sometimes we've just created a whole new song using just bits and pieces of things we've snipped out of what the musicians have played. That's a lot of fun. And
have you done that across the board, or was that just with Nathan? Or
no, I haven't done that with Nathan. I did it with Bojack,
oh, okay.
Chris Ardoin, Little Brian. No, we didn't do it with Nathan. Nathan said, "No, I'd rather you didn't do that."
Yeah. Well, the ones you mentioned, he's got more of just a dance band kind of
Oh,
sound,
yeah.
I think.
Well, Nathan writes really good songs too. Yeah.
What was so you went to Richard's Club though? Is that where you saw Bojack?
That's right. No, I didn't actually saw him at a place called the Quarterback Lounge in Lafayette the first time, and it was obvious that something really exciting was happening there. Yeah. I mean, like the Dirty Dozen, like Buckwheat or Bojack, and hey, John.
Hey, welcome back.
Oh, thanks.
Hi, John.
How are you doing?
Doing fine.
So, and there we had substantial commercial success with an artist in that region too, with Bojack. Yeah. And Buckwheat, that Yaya record, is still something that sells to Creole, Louisiana, or Houston. Mm-hmm.
Well, my sense is that Zydeco, you refer to it's not Creole folk music. I think Zydeco was born out of an amalgamation.
Oh yeah.
Zydeco itself was ever a.
Yeah. Well, you look at Chris Ardoin, whose great uncle was Amédée Ardoin, and his grandfather is still alive, Boisec, who actually has made a record for Rounder recently with Dirk Powell and Christine Balfa, and his father, Lawrence Black Ardoin, recorded for our Hooli. And I think this next record that we make with Chris, which we're going to do in the fall, is going to be over the top funky. I mean, he's really pushing now to do something beyond Bojack. And yet he'll still play a traditional Amédée Ardoin song too. I mean, he knows that stuff, as did Beaujacques.
How self-conscious is he of his lineage?
He knows it,
Uh-huh.
but he also can play that stuff in his sleep.
Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, he has studied it.
Yeah.
Gino Delafosse is the same way. What Gino didn't learn from his father and learned from musicians that he worked with, Gino's learned from buying records, and he's learned Amédée Ardoin's repertoire off of
Right.
old records, or the CD reissues.
Yeah.
So I do see a conscious effort in some young Creole musicians to learn what came before. Beaujacques had that too. His dad was a really fine traditional Creole musician, accordion player. But when Clifton Chenier started playing French music with a rhythm and blues band, it wasn't at that point. I don't think.
Well, I think that was my point a few
Yeah,
years ago. I don't know that it was ever the same as Amédée Ardoin. I don't think it ever was.
No.
The thing called Zydeco.
Yeah.
It was always something different.
But I think when we made the Buckwheat Ya-Ya record, my idea was to mix that like a reggae record, to really push the bass and the drums, and so I think the sounds of the records that we've made, the Zydeco records, have been right at the edge of where contemporary Zydeco is going, and I think have therefore actually influenced what people play. Yeah. And how they want to sound.
Do you ever think about whether it's time to go back, or are you getting records that start to sound too much like each other, or like other stuff that's out there?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Really?
I mean, it's always a challenge not to make a record that sounds like something you already did. For the artist and for the engineer and the producer, too,
So through it all, how was Rounder adjusted to this? Because he really, I think, took them in a lot of... I'd say your Zydeco... What was Rounder's first Zydeco record? It was a documentary record. It was Nick Spencer's documentary record.
Exactly.
Which, for its time, was a Rounder product.
Oh, yeah.
I think they did that in the 70s, and it was probably 8 to 10 years before they revisited Zydeco.
Yes. Yeah.
What's their reaction been? Has it been benign pleasure, benign indifference, benevolence?
I think with the Zydeco, it's generally been very supportive. Yeah. And I think, what can I say? I mean, they let me do it.
Yeah. I don't know that I'd say Ken knows a whole lot, or I don't know what your feeling is, knows a whole lot about it, or...
Yeah. But, I will say, though, that I think that...
I mean, he certainly knows the product. He knows what you're doing.
Yeah.
He knows what you've done.
Ken, I would say, in many ways, is a musical soulmate, in that if he goes for a more unvarnished sound, or if that's what he appreciates most, and I think you would find that a singer like James King or a Hazel Dickens would be right up there with what moves him the most. And I think if I'm going for maybe a more musically polished sound sometimes, I think ultimately what we both value is something soulful that says something to people, that communicates something to people, and it makes them feel something. And there's different ways of getting that. But I even if I've veered off in something where he thinks I'm nuts, or I wouldn't say nuts, but veered off into an area where he wouldn't want to go. I've still always felt there's a kind of respect from Ken for what I'm trying to do, And I think for Bill, the idea of doing something with Zydeco in a more contemporary sense is very comfortable for him, as he would be comfortable with world music or reggae or yeah. And in the end, I think Marion and I have patched up our feelings a little bit.
Well, did that go beyond whether or not it was too slick?
Following the Levy episode, well, in fact, I think he ended up trying to make the same kind of record, so.
Oh, okay. Oh, so the Levy, I guess I hadn't thought about that. The Levy episode obviously would have affected the two of you.
Yeah. Oh, big time. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
is there talk around here, and I don't mean, I'm not confining my question to your records, but is there still talk around here as to whether or not something is around a record or is not?
oh, yeah.
Can you give me any examples of it coming up? Can you think of it?
Oh, every A&R meeting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So what type of vocabulary gets bandied about? What type of considerations get spoken of?
Well, I think it's probably becoming a little harder to define what is a rounder record.
I think so too, and that's kind of why I asked the question. How does
I think we're at a difficult crossroads right now, in that in the singer-songwriter field, in Zydeco or Cajun music, in blues, there will always be a great artist coming along working within one of those fields with something very exciting to say to people. But I feel that the genres themselves, in terms of being able to grab attention in the media, are kind of tired. And we can't make the same record now that we would have made 20 years ago. I mean, maybe some music is timeless, but people just don't want to hear the same thing forever. I feel that today, more than ever, the success of an artist is as much personality based as musically based, either whether that's a self-conscious thing or something that somebody just has. I mean, Alison Krauss certainly has that. And Rounder's audience is getting older. The artists are getting older. So when you have interpreters of traditional music who are hitting 50 years old, and the audience is 50 years old, and the audience has been hearing the same thing from this musician for 30 years, and it can get a little tired to me.
Okay.
And yet I still see a Rounder record as something coming out of a tradition. Tradition meaning music that speaks for a particular culture. But of course, that's what rap is too.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, no less than Pete Seeger has told me that rap is folk music. So
but I would say though that I think there's more of a sense of connection with history though in a Rounder record. I mean, if you look at somebody like Chris Ardoin, he's not unaware of his grandfather, and he's not. He's chosen to do something other than to emulate what he hears on BET, even if what he hears on BET is coloring his own music. I think the thing that it's hard to see in not just in music and contemporary culture, but rap music is cut off from history to a degree. Many young people who buy a rap record, you know, don't know about Duke Ellington or James Brown. And they probably don't even know the little loops and samples that are going into the records. I mean, and in a funny way, that aspect of record production really appeals to me. Of just taking a bunch of stuff and, you know, making a track out of it. But I think I'm probably a lot less definite on this than maybe that you would get from some of the owners. But as I say, the thing that gets me excited most is when you hear something coming out of a tradition like Zydeco or New Orleans Rhythm and Blues or something, and somebody just finds something very brash and something relevant to a contemporary audience to say in that genre. So.
I don't understand here.
All right, I need to go get some food.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I did Bullseye Blues records early on. Dalton Reed and Paul Kelly, Little Buster. And this may seem sort of odd given the way the label came into being, with it basically being created as a vehicle for Ron Levy. But I've been trying to move all of our blues and R&B related projects to Bullseye now, to take that off Rounder entirely. Because it's schizophrenic when you're trying to sell it. I mean, you have to use from Rounder and Bullseye Blues. I mean, what does that mean in an ad? So the new Irma Thomas record, that's going to be on Bullseye now. So I'm really, from an A&R perspective, been trying to make that Rounder's blues imprint and to get the rest of the stuff on.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it was funny, for a while my stuff was on Rounder, Levy's was on Bullseye, you know, for the most part.
Well, that's why I asked the question, that Bullseye, but,
yeah. Dear.
Okay.
Anyway.